The purist would say that the term plant can only refer to earth-based organisms, but most of us would feel comfortable enough talking about alien animals, even though the animalia are just another kingdom of life on Earth. Purism is stupid. We learn more about life if we ask ourselves what makes a plant a plant. We could start with the one thing that everyone knows about plants: photosynthesis. Plants use energy from the sun to fix carbon from the atmosphere and thus create biomass. They are therefore what we'd call autotrophs, which I discussed in my exoecology video. However, we can't call any autotroph a plant because many autotrophs on Earth are not plants. Cyanobacteria photosynthesize, but are, well, bacteria. Many autotrophs don't even photosynthesize, instead feeding off, say, the chemical eruptions from hydrothermal vents in deep ocean trenches. So there's more to plants than being autotrophic. We could instead talk about the differences between plant cells and, say, animal cells. One of the most defining features of a plant cell is the cell wall. Interestingly, it's the reason that plants don't get cancer. They can have tumours, that is, a bunch of cells proliferating out of control, but the tumours can't invade further because of the rigidity of the cell wall, which makes plant cells as stationary as the whole plant itself. However, the cell wall is not unique to plants. Bacteria and fungi have them too, although they are made of peptidoglycan and chitin respectively, instead of the cellulose in plant cell walls. Some cell walls are even made of silica, a unique feature of the diatoms, which are a common group of phytoplankton, neither animal nor plant, but somewhere in between. So we see, microanatomy varies so much even between organisms on Earth that we can't reasonably expect extraterrestrial life to conform to the same standards. If not microanatomy then, could the distinguishing feature be in the macroanatomy? Because plants are autotrophic, they have no need for locomotion. Sunlight doesn't run away. What they have instead of legs or tentacles then are structures we call leaves, which tend to maximise their surface area to collect as much sunlight as possible. Alien leaves should therefore be recognisable to us, and if the organism does use the leaves to receive sunlight, the organism should be mostly stationary. Plants use all of their energy for growth, rather than for evasion, which is not to say that they don't have defences, but I don't think you'd ever expect a plant to run away from you. The problem is, we know of many plants on Earth without leaves. Green algae, for example, have no leaves because they're microscopic, so leaves wouldn't make much of a difference. Some can even propel themselves with flagellae. Even if they couldn't do this, could we say that a plant is any organism that can't move itself, one that is sessile? Well, only if you ignore fungi and the many invertebrate animals that are also sessile. As far as I can see, there is only one answer to the question of what makes a plant a plant. It's the same answer to the question of what makes you, you, or what makes a pile of silicon with various impurities a computer and not a rock. The answer is lineage. The current thinking is that all life on our planet is descended from one tiny single-celled organism. We don't know what it looked like, so we gave it a nice generic name. Luca, the last universal common ancestor. Note that we don't think it was the first living thing on Earth, as there will have been many competing experiments, if you like, which didn't do as well and died out. In other words, first iteration in an evolutionary algorithm is never the optimal solution. Obviously, there's no fossil evidence for Luca, but we can study it by comparing the genomes of every living thing, and thus learn quite a lot about it. I'm not going to go into any of that here though. Suffice it to say that the tree of life, since starting out from Luca about 4.5 billion years ago, has since branched out into the astonishing diversity we see today, and biologists have given every branch of this tree of life a name. Names are important. If something doesn't have a name, you don't know it exists, and you certainly can't study it. That's one reason we have cladistics, the discipline of naming all of these branches, called clades. Plants are just one such clade. This is probably the best way we can define what makes a plant a plant. So where does this leave our prospective alien plant? It seems that if we really wanted to call an alien a plant, we'd have to engage in a study of all of the alien planet's living things, not just the plants. We'd have to study the evolutionary lineages, draft a cladogram, and start naming those clades. If we wanted to, we could then take a clade that we think is ecologically similar to our Earth-based plants, and then call them plants too. The overall cladograms of our planet and the alien planet shouldn't overlap, so there shouldn't be any confusion, as long as you can differentiate between the planet's cladograms with, say, a prefix or something. There would only be a problem if the cladograms of our planets did overlap. If there was a common ancestor between the life on our planet and the life on the alien planets, This is a theory called panspermia, which posits that life spreads between star systems, even galaxies. The current data most support transferal of microorganisms within meteorites as the mechanism of panspermia. Some people have even theorised that certain outbreaks of disease have had extraterrestrial origins, although I should say, without any evidence at all. The Andromeda strain is still science fiction. For the most part, though, I see no problem with calling an alien a plant, animal, or whatever. It's all a question of cladistics.